Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is another episode of We the Governed. Today we're going to be digging into a topic. I know I've done a series of videos on this, but everything keeps changing. The news keeps changing. There's updates all the time. And so today it's going to be another topic on, of course, the Department of Justice suing 6 states for also failure to clean up their voter rolls. And remember, we just did a couple videos about how Washington State, of course, decided not to comply with the Department of Justice and provide our voter rolls. And it looks like we're not alone. And the Department of Justice just sued 6 more states. And of course, that's not good news if you are Washington State Secretary of State Hobbs, who has basically been in the cover-up fraud program in Washington State, or at least that's the choice he's decided to make, as he conceals significant information from the Department of Justice about Washington State's voter rolls. If he had nothing to hide, why would he hide it? That's a good question. He can't really answer it very well, and this is probably just leading to the inevitable fact that Washington State's going to be one of the next states in this mix. Now, just a quick reminder before we go too much further, if you haven't hit the subscribe or the like button, please do that down below. If you want to support We the Governed, you can also do that in the link down below as well. We're trying to produce as much content as we can to get you educated about the stuff that I guarantee the traditional media absolutely won't be telling you anytime soon. So let's get into this case because I think this is an important story about the Department of Justice really moving fast here on voter roll cleanup and the fact that a lot of states are refusing to cooperate and trying to conceal exactly what's going on in those states. Keep in mind, as I've talked about this before, this is an old law going back to the Democrats of the Jim Crow era in the 1960s. The Department of Justice had to engage and get involved in the South to make sure that elections were actually going to be fair and honest. And the Department of Justice sued southern states and counties for decades on that issue for a long time. The Democrats became experts at all kinds of different ways to manipulate the voter rolls to prevent Republicans and black Americans generally, and earlier in the earlier eras, freed slaves, prevent them from being able to actually participate in the voting process. So Democrats, well, they may not be targeting those exact people now, they're still exactly doing different games in Washington State, and this seems to be just a continuation of that story and that theme. So that, I think, is really important to know just from a background. Now, just a quick outline here because it's kind of important to look at exactly what the Department of Justice has been doing. We talked a few days ago, actually, about the fact that they had already filed lawsuits last week against Oregon and Maine. And these were 2 states that apparently early in the process just absolutely refused to cooperate with the Department of Justice, and they chose to conceal whatever the heck they're doing with their voting rolls in the background. But now we get to add the state of California, state of New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, and then this one surprised me a little bit, New Hampshire. This really wasn't on my top 10 list in the state, but at this point in time, these are the 8 states going to federal court that the Department of Justice is suing to get access or some kind of level of transparency on exactly what's going on with their voter rolls. And of course, for those of us who live in the Great Pacific Northwest, we're wondering, is Washington State next, or where is it on this list? I do think it's fairly inevitable that they will be suing Washington State. Right now, if you're in the Secretary of State's office and you are advising Steve Hobbs, and let's presume you actually care about him and are going to tell him the truth, you're going to be telling him that he's next and that he doesn't have a lot of time to get out of this lawsuit. So it seems like this inevitable result. So we'll see what happens. But things are moving fast, and it seems to be going very quickly here right now. Now, one thing to remember, and people ask this all the time, what are they waiting for with Washington State? Well, the one thing to remember is that the 800-pound gorilla in this fight isn't going to be Washington. It's going to be California. It's going to be New York. It's going to be Illinois. It's going to be these other big states that have much more capable legal teams. I mean, Bob Ferguson's just considered the little guy out here. Eventually, they're going to get around to suing us too, but these other states are much bigger and probably more important in some significant ways in the big scheme of things. And so as much as, for me, Washington State's the center of the universe, you're still going to see them focusing on some of these other states as they go along. Now, let me just get into this again because I know I've talked about this before, but the big question is always, what is Secretary of State Hobbs hiding? I mean, come on, why doesn't he just share the voter rolls? It sure looks like he's trying to hide something. Well, number one, he wants to conceal just how many illegal aliens are on Washington State's voter rolls. I don't know that number, neither do you, but the feds are interested in finding out, and Hobbs doesn't want him to know. Secondly is how many legal aliens are actually on the voter rolls. And these are H-1B visa holders or student visa holders. I've had several dozen show me their ballots in recent years, and they're kind of terrified because they don't want to lose the potential to become a citizen, and they know they can't vote, and yet despite that, Department of Licensing registered them to vote, usually against their will and often without their knowledge. Then, of course, there's also the fake voters that are on the voter rolls, or the duplicate voters voting in other states at the same time, or within our state, or because the Department of Licensing loves handing out voter registrations like candy at a parade, and they oftentimes register the same person to vote many, many, many times. And that's why you get stories of people up in King County getting 17 votes. Of course, the big question right now is exactly how many illegal votes have actually been cast in past years. And it's an answer nobody really knows at this point in time, but the feds at least would like to get some kind of an idea. And this is exactly what Hobbs is hiding in his behavior and his desire to not provide this information to him. Now, the second question that usually comes up, of course, is who is Hobbs protecting by taking this risk and concealing the truth and having an inevitable conflict with the Department of Justice? Another good question, and going into this again, number one, he's going to be protecting Governor Bob Ferguson, who's clearly up to his eyeballs in whatever bad behavior's been going on. He was Attorney General 12 years before he became governor. He is intimately familiar with most of these fraud situations and bad behavior, certainly the Department of Licensing. He knows where all the bodies are buried, and he just wants to keep them buried. Jay Inslee, of course, the previous governor, well, not as smart and relatively clueless about most aspects of government. He was still going to be involved, and his fingerprints are going to be on this as well. Ferguson's definitely protecting them. Most importantly, he's protecting the bureaucrats of the Department of Licensing. Frankly, they're just down the hallway from his office, and they do bad things every day they go to work, and according to every whistleblower I've ever had out of that agency, there's a lot more to uncover as they dig into it. So Hobbs is protecting that group of bureaucrats. He's protecting the DSHS bureaucrats, and these are the ones who administer SNAP and Apple Health and the Medicaid benefits that the feds are basically giving money to the state send it out to illegals, and the DSHS crew ends up registering everybody that comes their way, and they usually register them to vote multiple times too. So that's a group that he's also protecting. He's going to be protecting, of course, ERIC, which is this NGO outside entity that's used to supposedly do the work that they obviously aren't doing to clean up the voter rolls. And they're poor quality of work, possible dishonesty, possible collusion in the behavior of bad actors in keeping the voter rolls dirty. That's one of the groups who he's protecting. And then most obviously, he's going to be protecting some people that he kind of views as customers of his, which are some of the more corrupt auditors in Washington State, particularly the ones that are the pro-fraud auditors, so like Spokane, King County, people like that. And possibly other politicians, especially ones that might have had really close elections, and they certainly don't want the spotlight shine on some of their historical behavior, or especially of those who supported him. So this is who he's going to be protecting. And in the end, I mean, the one thing I want to point out to people oftentimes is that we usually eventually find out what they're hiding. Really, this delaying tactic that Secretary of State Hobbs has had, I think, is just mainly about kicking the ball down the road and hoping something goes wrong so that you don't ever have to provide the truth. And whether he's fully aware of exactly how bad things are, or he's just covering up for the others who have convinced him to make sure he needs to keep the cover-up going, that's what's going on right now. And with these recent 6 lawsuits just filed on Thursday of this week, it looks very clear to me that the Department of Justice, at least the Civil Rights Division, is moving full speed ahead on this type of litigation, and resolution of some of these other cases is going to be a pretty clear indication of where Washington's going to go with it as well. So that's what's going on. I want to give you a quick update on this. I don't really have anything specific as a call to action, just to let you know that please pay attention to what's going on out there, and I'm going to encourage you to keep putting pressure on Washington State Secretary of State. Even if he's doing dishonest and corrupt things now, it's always possible for him to have a change of heart and do the right thing in the future. It's not that hard. It is something that he could do if he chooses to. So with that, I just want to remind people that the only reason we're even in this situation, making progress for the first time in probably 4 generations in this state on the election integrity issues, is because people like you and others, and some people you might be knowing, who spent the time to go out and doorbell, validate voters, find all these problems, looking at the databases, spreading the word about what was actually going on in our state. Over time, that's built up, and I think that's one of the reasons why the feds are finally looking into this. It's very important. But you don't get there unless you're willing to show up. Because, as I always say, the future belongs to those who show up.